Welcome to a new camera comparison video, flagship versus mid-ranger, and this time around we have the Nothing phone against the Zenfone 9. As requested by my viewers, I now have also a Nothing phone here to compare it with various different devices, and we'll start off with the comparison against the Zenfone 9. So let's get started. So let's take a look at specs first. We have a dual camera setup on both, a dual 50 megapixel camera setup on the Nothing phone, consisting of a 50 megapixel main camera shooter with a large aperture and a large sensor, as well as a 50 megapixel ultra wide angle. On the Zenfone 9 we also have the same camera sensor, but housed in a gimbal camera, 50 megapixel main sensor, as well as a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle. And on the front we have a 12 megapixel autofocus capable front facing camera on the Zenfone 9, and we have a 16 megapixel non-autofocus capable camera on the Nothing phone 1. So I think we will start off with video samples of the front facing cameras. So this is the video on the Nothing phone front cam, 1080p 30 frames per second only, and no microphone attached, even though I have a microphone here, but it doesn't work because the Nothing phone's camera application cannot record from external audio sources. How bad is this? It's just like very, very bad, even for mid-ranger, because almost every other mid-ranger can really do this. What do you think about the quality, stabilization and colors on the Nothing phone 1? Here now the Zenfone 9 that can record 4K 30 on the front camera and has better stabilization, because I think the Nothing phone doesn't have any stabilization on their front facing camera, and this one even has autofocus. So if I want to show you something like, for example, my microphone cable, should be able to focus on this one here and then back on my face. So this is pretty handy, especially if you want to vlog. The Zenfone 9 has a very good front facing video camera. And this is now the main camera of the Nothing phone, 50 megapixel. You can see the nice background blur, better HDR. This is the IMX766, so a flagship grade camera sensor that we have gladly on the Nothing phone. Sadly, at 4K 30 frames per second that this one can record here, I cannot switch to the ultra wide angle. I can just crop into the main sensor, but this doesn't really look good. So let's try to crop in to see what is there on the other side of the Rhine. I can go 2 times, and then if I want to I can zoom in a little bit, but you can see, like, even if I can zoom in 10 times it just does not look very good. This is now the ultra wide angle on the Nothing phone, also 4K 30, but sadly I cannot switch during recording between the camera sensors, which might be a limitation of the processor, though I saw other phones with the same processor doing this already, so it's some kind of processing issue that the Nothing phone here still has. So now I'm recording with the Zenfone 9 and its main camera, gimbal stabilized 4K 30 frames per second, also the same IMX766. We should in theory get the nice background blur as well, but this camera has some autofocus issues with the default ASUS camera software, which is a little bit of a bummer, I would say, but I can switch to the ultra wide angle if I want to, so during recording even I can just simply switch, and now we are on the ultra wide angle, and this is how it looks like, pretty ultra wide, pretty cool as well. And let's perform a zoom test as well, because this camera has a bit of a limitation. It cannot zoom so far because it doesn't have a dedicated zoom lens, but what we can do is like 1 times, and then we can zoom in. This is now 2 times, and I can go up to 4 times. You can see stabilization is working perfectly fine because we have this gimbal inbuilt here, but of course there's nothing much to see here. And yeah, what do you think about this gimbal stabilized lens on the Zenfone 9? Okay, here we have the photos. On the left always the Nothing phone, and on the right always the Zenfone 9. What we can see here on first glance is a bit of a higher exposure on the Nothing phone that tends to overblow the highlights a bit, though it's not overblowing them too much, as you can see here. But the Zenfone 9 has a little bit more of HDR and lower exposure, but also what you can see here, a little bit better HDR, because you can see the details here in the tree, especially here in those trees, where it's black on the Nothing phone, and on the Zenfone you can still see a little bit of details here. And you can also see that we have a little bit of warmer color tone on the Nothing phone and a bit of cooler on the Zenfone 9. When we go to close-up shots, we have almost the opposite effect, where we have a bit of warmer kind of colors, higher exposure on the Zenfone, and a little bit cooler and lower exposure on the Nothing phone. In terms of detail level and so on those close-up shots, they are almost identical. They are using the same main sensor here for this close-up shot, and you can see that they both are good in terms of getting details here. So not much of a difference. The Zenfone 9's ultra-wide angle can also be used for taking even closer close-up shots, but I didn't compare them here because the Nothing phone doesn't have an option for those kind of macro shots. When we go to the next photo, we can see the ultra-wide angle, where we can see basically the same kind of thing that we saw with the main lens. Overexposure, brighter picture on the Nothing phone, and darker exposure, better HDR on the Zenfone. So from the angle of view, you can see that we have a little bit slightly brighter angle or wider angle of view on the Nothing phone, where you can see a little bit here of this wall, where here it is like almost gone. You can see a little bit of an indication here of this wall, and so there's a wider field of view on the Nothing phone for sure. What we can also see is the overblown highlight here, where the Zenfone 9 is preserving this highlight here. Also, I think that in terms, because we have a wider field of view on the Nothing phone, I think the detail levels are a little bit less than on the Zenfone for sure, what you can see here as well. And when it comes to overdoing it with over sharpening, the Nothing phone is a culprit here that has chromatic aberrations and problems with sharpness and is over sharpening things up, where the Zenfone 9 is also over sharpening things, but not as dramatic as the Nothing phone on the ultra wide angle. So the ultra wide angle is a clear win for the Zenfone 9. When it comes to the main photo and taking a look at details, we can clearly see again a bit of overexposure on the Nothing phone. In this case, the Nothing phone was not focusing on this statue that I was focusing on the Zenfone 9, for example. But you can also clearly see sharper picture in the background than the Zenfone 9, because it was focusing here. Here everything is a little bit more blurry. It was focusing here on the front, where the Zenfone 9 has the front a little bit out of focus. You can clearly see it in the comparison. But what we can see here is as well, just look at the background here and the sharpness here and compare it with the sharpness here. It looks like it is sharp on the Zenfone 9 a little bit, but there's also artificial sharpening. This is the problem of the Zenfone 9. You can fix it by using Gcam, but not everything can be fixed. So there's a bit of over sharpening on the Zenfone 9 that's overdoing it a little bit. And when it comes to the background blur, you can see, and the exposure, you can see that both are on par here when it comes to the overexposure of the background. So both struggle here in this case. In terms of colors, we have also again a bit warmer kind of colors on the left and a bit of on the right, a bit cooler. The next photo here clearly shows again, taken with the main lens, the overexposure and brighter colors on the Zenfone 9. You can clearly see it here in the cloud, where we can see more details. Again, the color change, more warm, more cool kind of colors. The bokeh in general, the out of focus area, as you can see in comparison to the one in focus, both using Sony's IMX766 sensor, the same. You don't see much of a difference. There's nothing that gives the Zenfone an advantage in daylight photography. When it comes to low light photography, we have definitely exaggerated differences in colors. So more warmer color tone on the Nothing phone, and on the Zenfone definitely more cool, even a bit of greenish kind of color. We can see clearly that the Zenfone is doing more post-production. Look at this written text there and compare it with the Nothing phone. The Nothing phone way more natural here, even though it's also doing some over sharpening or sharpening up, but the Zenfone 9 is a tad too sharp here, and this is creating a little bit of an artificial kind of view here. But you can see that the numbers here, for example, they can be read a little bit more clearly, and the QR code here more clearly than on the Nothing phone, because it is doing this over sharpening. But we have the halos around those numbers, so it's a bit of a mixed bag. Both have noise, but I think the noise is a bit more apparent. Is it more apparent? I think on the Nothing phone, very, very close, both using the same sensor. Ultra low light, very interesting. The Nothing phone is black here, so the night mode failed, even though I was checking night mode and checked night mode and it was doing its thing, but for 3 or 4 seconds, but this is what I got. On the Zenfone, 3 seconds exposure did give me this. The Zenfone has the big advantage of the main camera built into a gimbal, so it can have very long exposures and very sharp exposures, as you can see here. And when the Nothing Phone, I redid this shot again, I got this, which is a bit better, I would say. You can clearly see what is there, but again, we have like a magenta, I would say, kind of color casting here. In this case, it is not really sharp and detailed in comparison to the Zenfone 9, and the Zenfone 9 can do even 7 seconds exposure in night mode, and this is what you get there. Way better even than the 3 seconds exposure. Also sharp now after the latest updates of the Zenfone 9. I got sharp pictures here out of it, and the Nothing Phone is very blurry, as you can see here, and the colors are correct on the Zenfone 9. The Zenfone 9 is clearly beating the Nothing Phone in terms of low light photography because of the gimbal camera stabilization. So what can you say? It is very close, the Nothing Phone and the Zenfone, in terms of main camera footage in daytime. There's slight overexposure and a little bit less of HDR on the Nothing Phone. It uses warmer colors than the Zenfone 9. The ultra wide angle is less sharp on the Nothing Phone, less detailed on the Nothing Phone, and also I think the HDR problems and the color is a bit more exaggerated on the Nothing Phone than on the Zenfone. So the Zenfone 9 clearly, as the flagship, is beating the Nothing Phone here in this regard. Also close-up shots very same on both, using the main sensor, and with the bonus that the Zenfone 9 can do also close-up shots with the ultra-wide angle that the Nothing Phone clearly cannot do. So what do you think about those two devices in terms of photography? So which camera is the winner? The Nothing Phone, can it compete with the 300 euros more expensive Zenfone 9? Write it down in the comment section. Which one do you think is the winner here, the clear winner in this camera comparison? That's everything for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Until the next time. Bye.